Here's a disassembly of Broadax after Extreme Robots in Manchester. So here's the damage from Binky and Drumroll. As you can see, pretty much damaged the top containing lid, pretty dinged up, and the side panel, which all the welds broke. As you can see, it kind of bent in a little bit and it's no longer the right shape. The damage from the two spinners, pretty nasty. It's all a bit out of whack at this point. Can be fixed, possibly. One of the little brackets that holds the body on, again, attached to it, not the body. So let's take the body off. And the rest of it is all in one piece, bar the fact that the welds broke. The rest of the bodywork is actually in pretty fair nick. It's not too damaged. Again, we can weld that panel back on and away we go. So here's the Axe speed controller. It was held on by a bit of Velcro, but the Velcro didn't stick to the speed controller, so it just fell off in the end. We blew one of these at the event, but overall seems to work okay. Everything got taped together after the first melee, where all the connectors came loose. Basically didn't remember to tape it the first time round. So in subsequent battles, we put lots and lots of tape around all the connectors. So we'll just get rid of the connectors here. Lots and lots of cable ties. Robots internally, generally cable ties, tape. Anything you do to keep the wiring from hitting something it's not supposed to. So I'll just take these off. And there was one to the side wheel bracket as well. This was kind of a last minute thought because it wasn't supposed to go there originally. It was supposed to go in the bodywork. Got plenty of Velcro around to keep the wiring held in. So let's just separate that out. And again, there's another connector down here, which is the actual connector to the receiver. So we'll just then take that. That's a bit fiddly. There we go. That's the speed controller. It's Hobby King 125 amp red brick. Pretty cheap, easy to replace. So as you can see, the motor turns, but the Axe does not. It all kind of fell apart. The Axe is actually not aligned where it should be now, so all the chains are all kind of locked in place, as it were. We also had the bearing pop out at the top as well, so it's kind of not where it's supposed to be. The wheel, we had this sort of foam covering, thanks Rory for that, which was to try and help with the sort of the ground clearance. In the end, it just kind of tore itself off. That's a block for the battery. It's actually a piece of old mouse mat, which works pretty well. Again, let's get the connectors off. These are the connectors that actually run to the speed controller from the other side of the robot. So these are the ones for this side's motor. So let's turn it around. You can see the electronics on the other side. And you can see it's pretty packed in there. It's quite a lot. Here's the damage again from the Binky drum roll hit. Twisted all this, broke the brackets. Yeah, it can be dented back into shape and probably live to fight another day. Now this motor, the wheel you'll notice is a little bit on the loose side. So we'll look at that a little bit later. Again, more wiring loom, and it is a rat's nest. Again, this was to try and keep the robot as dense as possible. All the wiring was kind of crammed in. So let's get this separated from the robot. As you can see, there's plenty to cut off to let us get at the wiring. So that separates out to the fuse. So this is the fuse and link, and there's a bunch of diodes in the big red package at the bottom. That's due to the fact that it goes dual voltage and we don't want any sort of backfeed. So yeah, more cable ties. And that's the actual link that went out the side of the robot. Here we've got 2 drive motors and 1 for the lights. Lights were stuck to the inside of the armor. Again, more Velcro. And this just then goes through a channel at the bottom of the robot to allow the cables to run from one side to the other. So we'll get that out of there. Again, this is a bit fiddly to actually separate the wiring from the robot. Yeah, it's a little bit tight in there. So in the end, I just get a pair of long nose pliers and just kind of wiggle it to actually separate it. And then push the rest through. And there we have it. So that's the other end of the wiring loom, the one that connects to the axe power and the extra battery for jumping the voltage up and an extra light. So we're left with now the 2 speed controllers. These are TZ85As, but flashed with Simon K to allow brushless. And annoyingly, they don't sell these anymore. So if something does go wrong with these, I will be changing out the whole electronics. For the new one, they will be changed for something else anyway, just because I can't buy any more of them. So those set of wires go through a little hole in the side of the axe to go to the motor on the other side. Then this whole package goes through to the Spectrum receiver. Get a better angle on that. And again, tape the aerial down so it didn't get caught in anything that it wasn't supposed to. And yet more tape to tape it to the other motor. So now get that separated, and the whole loom comes out. So you'll note that there's one thing that I do to the receiver, and that's put a little tie around the servo connectors to stop them actually popping out of the receiver. A little bit of a safety thing. It's never actually happened in practice. Again, 2 TZ85As, but yeah, can't get those anymore. So this wheel, you notice is a little bit on the loose side. It does spin, but it doesn't seem attached correctly. We'll have a look at that later. So let's get the drive brackets out so we can separate everything out. So there's 2 M5 bolts go through the side and just connect to some L-shaped brackets that connect the outer to the drive brackets. And these are an absolute faff to get on and off because we decided to use an angle. And the reason for that is because the previous robot, Broadax, had a problem where the 5mm aluminium would bend in. By putting that little lip in it, it doesn't actually happen anymore. So we'll separate those out. These were originally Loctited, but not with red Loctite, just with the lightweight stuff. It did stop the bolts from moving, but it meant that I could actually separate them out again. So here we go. And here's the whole assembly. Bit wiggly. But the motor does move. So the motor and the gearbox aren't damaged, they're just a the wheel isn't attached to the way it's supposed to be. So you note here's some work I did at Manchester to actually lower the ground clearance, so the wheels actually touch the floor more. The armour was so close to the floor, and the fact that it's designed as sort of symmetrical meant that there's actually no ground clearance at all, and it just kept beaching itself. So that was to try and remedy that, which it did for Melee 3. So let's get the other side out, and you'll note something about this side that's different to the other side. Again, you'll see this bolt is a nightmare to get out of the robot. But it does come free eventually. And here's the difference. Lots of washers. So one of the problems with rushing your robot is occasionally the dimensions won't be where they're supposed to be. Because you'll note that a lot of this is handmade, it's not precision made or water cut or anything. It was just a slight mismeasurement by a couple of mil, meant that we had to put some washer padding in. So here's the other wheel assembly, and this one is solid as a rock. Good job. There are some scores around the motor, and that's probably because it ran too close to the bulkheads. Again, a design change that will probably be made in a new robot. So this motor's all, well, loose now. With lots of bolts, lots of bits and pieces that we need to now take out to get at the gearbox. These little triangles that held the front and rear arm on were, again, a thing that we added kind of at the last minute. There was a different design intended, but time pressures meant that that's what we went with. So let's take the Axe gearbox off. Now again, there's two M5 bolts that go through from the front and from the back, so 4 bolts total. And they attach the front and the rear to the gearbox itself. And they're held in by some lock nuts that are inside the gearbox, which also means that it is a pain when you can't take the thing apart, as we'll get to in a second. Also, as a sort of a last minute thing, is we added these rubber stops to try and stop the axe from smashing the bulkhead. And they're only cheap. I think picked them up from Wilco for not so much money. Again, a last minute thing. In a new design, they'll be more substantial and more thought about before the event. So again, let's get inside and try and take the other bolt out. Now, here's where a design flaw comes in. In order to get at the bottom bolt on the one side, you have to actually take the bottom bolt out of the motor bracket. Now, this was basically because when I designed the bulkheads in CAD, I didn't leave enough tolerance in for the bolts that come through from the outside. So, lesson learned. Make sure there's more gap between things when you're putting them in CAD. It looks like a good idea until you try and bolt it together and then realise, no, it was a bit too close. So get that out here. Okay. And repeat on the other side. You'll see that there's 2 bolts underneath there. And again, a rubber stop. Again, we just use some nylon threaded tape to actually hold it in there. It isn't held in by anything more substantial than that. Yeah, again, you can see the dent that the axe makes in it. It's quite a thud. And with those bolts out, we can take the whole assembly out of the middle of the robot. So in the base plate, we found this curious thing. No idea where it came from. Don't think it's part of my robot. It just appeared in the bottom of ours. So if this is yours, please tell me. And then all the bolts and everything, the nuts and bolts that hold everything together, separated out. This also means the base plate comes out. It is stuck in, or was stuck in, I should say. And again, you can see that it's got a weird shape. It was completely flat when it was put in the robot, but it hasn't stayed a completely flat shape. And again, these are the angle that front and back are made out of. More of the spinner bite. You can see it's quite well bent back. Otherwise, okay. And the other side, again, the same thing. This one's actually survived much better. So here's a closer inspection of the Axe gearbox. You can see it's a little bit wobbly. But actually that wobble isn't anything to do with the gearbox itself, it's just the fact that the chain is actually not where it's supposed to be. Put it down and everything's straight. So in terms of the actual gearbox itself staying straight, it has done, which is a good thing. So in order to take it apart, there's 4 threaded bars that run through. They run through some plates in the front and the back. So we'll just take those off. And they just poke through the whole thing and hold it together. There's 2 more in the back as well, so I need to take those out as well. So then we need to just take the 4 pins out. Now this actually turned out to be a lot more fiddly. They went in really easy. Getting it apart again though, not so much. So there we go. They're awkward. So there's 2 blocks that everything screws in together. So these bolt to the robot and bolt to the gearbox. Do that. So that's the rear one. And this is the front one, which was all drilled out, and then we had to move the holes to accommodate that little problem with the motor bracket being in the way. This is one of the bulkheads. We've got little screws through that are supposed to hold the bearings in. They're certainly not sufficient and not up to the job. We thought that a little holding would be enough. No, it's not. Not in a combat robot. So we'll take the gearbox apart now. And that's the lower part of it. And so it's got smallest sprocket, biggest sprocket, which is to step the gear in. It is not attached the way it's supposed to be, but we'll come back to that. And here we have the axe assembly itself, more chains. And this is the pin that goes through the middle of the axe. Now it's all supposed to be Loctited together, but as you can see I can just freely undo it, so whatever I did there I didn't do particularly well. Now we used 10mm all thread for the shafts. In hindsight, that probably wasn't the best idea, and certainly in the newer model it's not going to be made out of that. So you can see the little bits of the shaft there. So the axe itself is now out. And it looks okay other than this one ding here. If you've seen the videos from Manchester, you'll see that there is a a significant hit that Binky makes on the axe, and that's the evidence. The rest of it, though, looks pretty okay. It's all solid, and the bolts have come loose. It's just, yeah, not much to say about that. So here's the other bulkhead with the motor attached, and as you can see, the screws have all just come loose. I can't remember if I put Loctite around these ones. I don't think I did. Yeah, this is a public service announcement. Put Loctite around everything in a combat robot. What you think won't come loose will come loose. So let's just separate the motor out from this bracket. The bracket, by the way, is the same one that comes with the motor when it was ordered. This particular one is a prop drive, so it came from Hobby King. So it's the same bracket you get in the packet, basically. The motor itself, though, all seems all okay. It doesn't seem to have damaged it too much. You can see the little flat that we grinded onto it. So that looks all okay. So a couple of notes about this particular bulkhead. Again, there's the retainer. It didn't retain it properly, but yeah, and the top retainer as well. So on this bulkhead, there's this little nylon roller, and what this is intended to do is to keep the chain on the robot so it doesn't slacken up. But as you can see, it's gone the wrong shape. Now, looking at the design, there is a little bit of efficiency that if the axe travels too far, it will actually hit that particular nylon roller. That's part of what the rubber stoppers are supposed to do. So this is the lower bearing. The lower bearing, I think, is, yeah, it's a bit iffy. Probably needs to come out of there. It's probably not working anymore. And you can see that there's a ginormous score line around the outside. Now, this was one of the initial things, if you've read the build diary on the FRA forums, where everything was over-tightened, so the axe didn't move properly, and this is the evidence. This side, on the other hand, seems to be okay. Check the bearing moves. Bearing moves. So this one isn't completely broken. But this screw that holds the bearing in completely sheared off. And that's because the bearings got pushed out of the bulkheads. So here's another inspection on this gearbox shaft. And then the reason for showing you this is because it's quite interesting what actually happened to this. It's supposed to be flats with grub screws that kind of push into the flats such that it holds it all together. It's not sufficient. Not sufficient to run a brushless axe off. And you'll see why in just a sec. So the grub screw, rather than holding in the flat, just completely scored around the outside. This is also why in a lot of the battles it looked like the axe wasn't working and then it suddenly would. It's because the grub screw got a grip on the bit of the shaft that wasn't completely knackered. So the smaller sprocket, just take this off. This is held in by two nuts, and again, it's supposed to be Loctited all together. I think this one actually was Loctited, but only with the medium strength stuff. So take that off. And oh look, a bit of the shaft. That's not meant to happen. And you can see the problem is actually worse on this side. There's a complete score line around it where the grub screw is supposed to be attached to the shaft, but it just didn't. Instead, scored the shaft. So no, this doesn't work. So a more substantial shaft is going to have to be made. So earlier in the video, I mentioned that the one wheel didn't quite mesh properly and looked like there was some play in it, then it looked really loose. So here's a bit of a close-up of that wheel. So there is a retaining screw that goes through the middle, and what this does is this actually goes into the keyway in the wheel itself. Now it's not supposed to be that easy to unscrew it. The ones that are on Broadax, which are the same design, require a substantial amount more effort to get off. But it just pops straight off, and that's part of the problem. It's far, far too loose, and it just spins. It's not supposed to do that. There's supposed to be a collar in there that attaches to the output shaft on the Gibson Motu gearbox, but it just spins. The motor and the gearbox, however, absolutely fine. And again, a washer to make sure that the wheel doesn't push itself all the way in and jam up the drive. Again, a problem that we had with Broadax that this one wasn't supposed to have either. But yeah, the collar in there just spins, and it's not supposed to do that. It is supposed to be in there much tighter than that. So that solution is going in the bin. And that's everything for the teardown. Thanks for watching.